Hello and welcome to Inside Music, episode number 49. Have you missed us? It's been a while. My name is James Shotwell, and I'm the host of this podcast. And on this week's episode, I'm speaking with Spencer from the band Ice Nine Kills. Now, I'm sure the name Ice Nine Kills rings a bell for many of you, and for some of you it might not, but that's perfectly okay, because I am of the opinion that Ice Nine Kills have yet to really reach critical mass, at least in terms of notoriety and critical acclaim. The band, which formed in 2006 while members were still in high school, has taken on many forms over the last few years. They started with a punk rock edge, and then they kind of forayed into the world of metalcore for the last few releases. Their Fearless Records debut, Every Trick in the Book, is set to be released this Friday, December 4th, and it marks the beginning of yet a new era for the band. I would describe their sound as a heavier take on punk rock with just a dash of theatrics added in to keep things interesting. Think of the heyday of My Chemical Romance, or something a little bit crazier like the antics of the Venetia Fair, and you have something close to what Ice Nine Kills deliver with this release. During this episode of the podcast, Spencer and I talk about the band's joining with Fearless Records, the evolution of their sound, and where they hope to go from here. I have to admit that this is also kind of a curious episode for me because up until about a month ago, I wasn't necessarily a huge fan of Ice Nine Kills. It's not that I didn't enjoy their music, but rather that I had never really taken a lot of time to listen and appreciate what they were doing. I was sent Every Trick in the Book at the beginning of November, knowing that it was going to be released at the top of December, and it took me about a week to really give it a chance to sit down and listen to the whole record in full. When I did, I was blown away. Each of the 10 tracks on Every Trick in the Book is inspired by a different literary classic. So listening to it is kind of like enjoying somebody's extremely long and very interesting thesis on several different classic novels. It's something unlike anything you'll hear anywhere else in alternative music this year. And I think it's coming out at the perfect time, as there are not a lot of big albums coming out in December. There are some good records, but not a lot of huge albums that are going to steal everyone's attention. This month is the perfect time for a band like Ice Nine Kills with a unique, innovative, and insanely catchy sound to deliver an album that has the ability to catch a lot of people by surprise. At least that's what I hope happens, because the record's really good. Before we get to the conversation, however, I want to play you a little bit of music from Ice Nine Kills, and I also want to tell you about our sponsor. Some of you may be able to guess who it is, but I'm just going to go ahead and tell you. This week's episode of Inside Music is brought to you by Holix, the internet's leading digital promotional distribution platform. Whether you're looking to get your music in front of the press or you need a little help fighting piracy, Holix has the tools you need. For more information on Holix and access to a free 30-day trial, visit www.holix.com. That's www.haulix.com. I also want to point out that Inside Music is on Twitter. You can find us at Inside Music Pod. That's Inside Music Pod. We share updates about new guests, as well as a bunch of fun takeaways from the show, things that might not have made the final cut of the episode, and general music industry news and updates, often pulled from the Holix blog. Speaking of which, you should visit the Holix blog. That's where Inside Music was born, and that's where each new episode is first posted. You can find it at holixdaily.com. Again, that's HAULIX daily.com. So we've covered our sponsor, where the podcast can be found on Twitter, and where the podcast can be found online. I think that's everything, but I do want to say one more time that Ice Nine Kills' new album, their Fearless Records debut, Every Trick in the Book, will come out this Friday, December 4th. Don't miss it, okay? Let's get to the show.
So where's your savior tonight? His angels fall from the sky. His vital hands let me inside. I cannot be crucified.
I'm doing well, man. Just pulling into our show in New Jersey right now.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Well, you got a little bit to talk, like 30 minutes or so?
Yeah, that's fine.
Awesome, man. So you guys are on tour right now. I was actually going to start there because I realized I didn't know that you were from Swampscott. I'm in Brighton right now.
Oh, really? That's not too far.
No, no, not at all, man. Yeah, I've lived here for about 5 years now. I'm not a Massachusetts native or anything, but yeah,
Oh, where are you from originally?
I'm from Michigan,
What part?
like by Grand Rapids.
Oh, cool. Yeah, we play there quite a bit at the stash of the smaller room.
Yeah, yeah, the
I remember
intersection.
the intersection, yes. Played there several times.
Yeah, yeah, the stash. That's a cool little room.
It is cool. Yeah, we played on the bigger side too. I think most recently with Motionless in White. It was pretty insane.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that room.
Yeah, me too. And we like the burgers right down the street. What is it? Estella?
Yeah, yeah,
What's the
Stella's.
name?
Yeah, Stella's. I actually got a text from Mike just now being like, "Are you guys on the phone?" I'm like, "Yeah, dude."
Yeah, he
obvious."
he just texted me and you hadn't called yet, so I said no. So maybe he realizes it now.
That's fine. That's all good. It's all good. So where did you say you guys were today?
We are playing in Howell, New Jersey, at a spot called Game Changers. I believe it's owned or managed by the guy who puts on like the Bamboozle and the skate and surf fest.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds right. Have you guys been out for a while now, or is this like a one-off show?
Yeah, we've it's about a month. Actually, I think it's actually a month to the day because it started October 24th,
Oh, dang.
and it is now November 24th. So yeah, I've been out for a month. Looking forward to hanging out with some family for Thanksgiving, and then next weekend we do 3 CD release shows and a bunch of in-store stuff. So that carries us through December 9th. So we got a few days off to hang out with family, and then back at it again.
Yeah, you guys have a big show coming up at the Middle East here in Boston next week, right?
Yeah, if you're around, you should come out. It's gonna be a good time.
Definitely. This will be out by then, so people that are listening, there are shows. Where are the other shows at, just in case people want to get tickets that haven't?
December 4th, we are playing at Slake, which is a club in New York City. That's December 4th. That's the day the album comes out. Then the next night, December 5th, at the Webster Underground in Hartford, Connecticut. And the final CD release show is December 6th at the Middle East. And I've been told that there are only a few tickets left for that show in particular. So if you're listening, I hope you're not out of luck.
I like that. How has the tour been, man? How has the last month of your life on the road been?
It's been really cool. Headlining for us is relatively new. I mean, we did it when we had to back in the day just because that was all that, a band can really do when they don't have, a team behind them or, great tour offers or a booking agent. So this is really our sort of second headliner when we wanted to do it, really. And I love it. It's hard to go back to support tours just because, no matter what band you are, you play a support tour and, mainly the kids are there to see the headlining band. And it's always a great experience and obviously it's crucial in expanding the band and expanding your demographic to new listeners. But, I don't know, headlining and all the kids being there and singing all the words to our songs, it's a great experience, and it's my favorite way to play shows is to headline.
I can imagine, especially you got this new record coming out. I bet the extra time helps.
Yeah, definitely. And there's been a few singles out for the record already, and to see the kids, the first day we played on this tour, the new song had only been out for 2 or 3 days, and the kids knew all the words to it already. So that's always a nice thing to see. It's sort of validating and gives you confidence in the new stuff that you're doing. So yeah, we've had a great time.
Is that December 9th show in Rochester? Is that the end of the year for you guys?
Yes, that is the last appearance that we're doing. We're doing some in-store appearances, I believe, December 7th. We are in Pennsylvania, December 8th in Pennsylvania again, doing like an in-store signing, an acoustic show, and then we wrap up December 9th in Rochester, New York for an acoustic in-store. I don't have all the info on me right now, but if you go to facebook.com/ice9kills or Instagram, you will see all the information about the in-stores and stuff.
Yeah, well, good plug. That's good. You've been doing some marketing for this record. I can tell you've got the plugs ready to go.
I'm all ready to go.
Yeah, well, we'll get to this record in a second. I wanted to, if we could back up just a bit, because I know. So the last EP you guys did was kind of like a split release between Outer Loop and Fearless right after that deal went through, and then you guys are now considered like a full-on Fearless artist. So like, when did that transition happen, and like how did they go about it? Because you were kind of like, it was weird that the last release it was like that tandem deal with Outer Loop, and now you're just full-on Fearless artist. So when did that happen?
Well, yeah, so Outer Loop is like a sister label to Fearless, and we had been managed by Mike Mowery and Outer Loop team for a couple years. And when it came time to, really look for a record deal to put out the last record we did, The Predator Becomes the Prey, we were approached by the Outer Loop team, and they, had developed a really good relationship with Fearless and started this new label, and they wanted us to be the first band signed to the Outer Loop Records, / Fearless roster. So, we'd always loved working with Outer Loop, and they had really helped build the band and put a lot of work into it. And, Fearless Records has sort of been a staple in the, I guess the Warped Tour music world, I guess is a crass way of putting it, but that's the way I kind of see it. And, they've had big bands, so we thought, oh, this would be great. And we eventually thought, hey, maybe this will eventually lead to, a deal with Fearless to be on Fearless proper. So we thought that would be a great idea. It turned out to be awesome. And we assumed that, maybe a few records with Outer Loop and Fearless would bump us up. But when we were on tour with Motionless last winter, Mike said that, Fearless wants to have a discussion about some stuff and, about the new record and, who we're going to get it produced by and where we're going to track it. And they sort of just surprised us on the call that they wanted to bump us up to Fearless for the next record. So it was a total surprise, and it was pretty great. It was a pretty cool day. And so that was last February. So we've known about the Fearless deal for quite some time. And here we are, about 9 days from the first release for Ice 9 Kills on Fearless.
Yeah, I mean, does it, and fourth real record, so I mean, it has to feel like kind of a pinnacle of the journey so far now, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, I started the band so many years ago. This is the only band I've ever been in. I started in high school when we were, a ska pop punk band. And even back then, when I was in high school, Fearless was, one of those labels that, oh my God, to be on Fearless, there was Fearless, there's Drive Through, there was Epitaph, and so to come full circle and to be on one of those labels now, it's a really cool experience, and it was always one of the main goals, ever since I started to write, my own songs, was to be on a record label that, people in the punk rock community know about. That's a marquee label, so to speak.
Yeah, and well, I'm happy it worked out for you guys. And this record, I think will do good for you guys on the label. I think you fit in well. I've heard it. I've heard it a bunch of times now. I've had it for about, I guess I got it like at the beginning of November, because that's when I started talking to Mike about doing this. So I've been listening to it for about 3 weeks now. I might be the most familiar with it outside of your band and your management.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, none of the fans have heard the entire thing.
I know. Good on you guys, because you made it this far without a leak so far. Knock on wood. But
I know. I'm trying to find wood in the venue right now.
I got a big desk right now. Don't worry.
Cobblestone road. So.
The book. I love the record because it really appeals to me. I'm a big book nerd and a big horror nerd, so the idea of behind it of kind of pulling these stories from all these classic works of literature, that really appeals to me. Would you call it a concept album though?
I think that maybe fits somewhere under that umbrella of a concept record, but the concept is that every song is based on a classic piece of literature. It's not one story sort of tied together, and that's what I think generally what you consider a concept album to be. So the record has a concept, but I don't think it's a concept record, really, if that makes any sense.
No, I did. That was kind of what I was struggling with, because I'm gonna write about it for the site as well, and I was starting to kind of piece together my thoughts, and I was like, I don't know if you can call this a concept album. I guess it kind of, like you said, it is. It has a concept behind it, but it's not like one fluid story or anything like that.
Right.
Just for people listening. So for people that don't know, it's basically you're pulling from a bunch of different books, and you've released some singles that I think the singles you pulled were almost the easiest references for me to get. I don't think I get them all, but there's some good ones on here. The Exorcist one was pretty clever. It makes me laugh.
Yeah.
I think the funniest.
I think we wanted to pull that one because I think the movie got so much attention. It's a brilliant film and one of the best horror movies ever made. But I think that a lot of people fail to realize that it was a great book before it was a movie.
Yeah.
So we definitely wanted to include that.
Okay. I want to talk about a couple of different songs. I like the big. I think this is definitely your most theatric album, and I kind of wanted to know when did that come into play? Because I mean, there's always been some theatrical element, I think, to the band's sound, but this album, from the get go, it like that I think helps feed that concept idea because it feels like a big theatrical piece. And so I was wondering, like, is that intentional? Did you feel like that fit with the idea of like borrowing from literature, so you kind of make it a little bit more grandiose like that, or natural progression?
As you said, the band's always touched on that a little bit. One of the first songs that people really started to know the band for was a song called "Greatest Story Ever Told," and it kind of had that little nod to I'm a big fan of plays and musicals and Broadway stuff like Les Miserables and Phantom of the Opera. So, that song was the first one that kind of touched on that world. And it's been something that I've always wanted to expand on. And on the last album, we did a little bit of it, but this album, we saw that we were doing it about these stories, and it sort of put itself there on its own because it just made so much sense with the concept behind the record. But yeah, it was definitely a cool experience, and I think that hopefully it breathes something a little bit new into the genre, along with the concept that you can be a heavy band, but you can step outside the box a little bit and explore some uncharted territory. As risky as it might be, we just didn't care. We just wanted to do it.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think it works out well, and I think with Nature of the Beast as the opening, it definitely has that feel, like curtains rise, and then like you kind of lead the way into this big thing. That's the big song that kind of bursts out of what you kind of start rather subtly with, and then it kind of explodes on you.
Well, thank you, because that's exactly the way I wanted it to come across.
Well, I
wanted that big thing.
Well, I like that the band has kind of gotten is kind of taken a heavier turn over the last few years, but there are 2 tracks on this album that prove that there's still like that real soft sucker. There's that soft-hearted element to it as well, particularly "Star-Crossed Enemies." Like that's power ballad 101 to an extent,
right?
And I love it. What's it pulled from first?
Star-Crossed Enemies is from Romeo and Juliet. That one is about one of Shakespeare's masterpieces. And we wanted it to not come across lyrically as cheesy, because Romeo and Juliet's always the thing people go to when they talk about love and this, but I think some people forget that it's a really dark story, obviously, with the ending. And so we wanted to do it in a way that was dark and really sort of showed that side of the story, but also we wanted it to be romantic. And I think we nailed it on that one. I'm excited about that track.
I like the way it transitions that track from "The Plot Sickens." I feel like as you kind of like ease into the middle of the album, "Star-Crossed" comes at a point where it kind of is like, oh, but there's so much more you haven't heard yet. You know what I mean? Because that song is so much different than the first 4 tracks.
Right. Yeah, and I'm glad that you liked that transition. That was, when I was playing around with, which song goes where, and that's fairly important when you're putting a record together. I just loved how the end of "The Plot Sickens" kind of just slammed right into a different sound that you hadn't heard yet on the record with "Star-Crossed Enemies."
Okay, now let's do the other set. Let's do the other slow one. The one that I think the mixtape song, as I like to call it, the testimony.
Yes. That song is from maybe the least known book. I mean, it's definitely a classic book. It's called The Test of the D'Urberville. And that one is about a woman who is raped and eventually seeks revenge on the man that raped her. And so, yeah, that was, obviously a really sort of current topic with all that's going on with the stuff that we hear all the time, like, Bill Cosby stuff and whatnot. And, yeah, I was really excited about how that turned out. It was sort of an afterthought that we wanted to make it piano because I originally had written on acoustic guitar, and then JD, who handles a lot of the orchestration and stuff like that, transposed it to piano, and it sounded so beautiful that way. And I see a lot of bands. Sometimes a band will be heavy and they'll throw it on an acoustic track. So I wanted to try to make it a little bit different and utilize the piano on that one.
Well, I think it turned out really great, and I like, you're right. There's always like that. There's that trend of like the acoustic track, the piano track, far less often. And I like that it's not just a love song, because like anytime you hear like a slow song start, you're like, oh, here comes the love song. But as you said, the source material isn't that, and so I think that's an awesome thing that makes the song a little bit more dynamic. And you're like, oh, we can just have like a powerful, emotive song. It doesn't have to be "I love you" or "I miss you."
Exactly, and the "I love you" and the "I miss you" songs often, they always sell really well. So I guess, again, a little bit of a riskier thing, especially with the subject being so heavy. Obviously rape is one of the worst things that anyone could do to another person. So it was sort of an interesting experience to write that song.
Well, I feel like, this, especially with the events of this past year, it's kind of interesting to see how artists and music in general is responding, because I feel like, for the last 5 years or so, there was a time when like just songs about relationships and living your life to the fullest, and that was kind of like the big thing at radio. But given like all of the things that have happened over the last year, between terrorist attacks and Cosby, and things within the alternative music scene and whatnot, I feel like there's definitely there's a call, or there's a desire for music that is almost a response to that, if not born out of feelings about those issues. And I think we're just getting to a point where that's anyone that's recorded material about that stuff will be able to share it. So I think you guys are kind of ahead of the curve of what we might see more of in 2016, this like socially conscious music, a little bit more than like just yourself. Yeah,
I hope that happens. I appreciate that as a very nice compliment.
Well, I'm happy to compliment you. I mean, I think it's a fun. I think it's great to make a fun record, and it's great to make a record that people want to sing along with. But to actually say something that speaks to the reality that we know beyond relationships is important. I think that
right.
And you guys do it in such a way that it doesn't come across as like preachy, and it doesn't come across as necessarily protest music or anything, but rather like it's artfully done, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Well, let me tell you what really inspired the book angle for you. Was it just a desire to help connect young people with maybe kind of these things that that they might not otherwise check out if you hadn't kind of brought it to their attention in this unique way?
Well, it sort of fell on my lap, the whole concept, because the seed was planted for the album when we did the song "Me, Myself, and I," which was released as a bridge track between the last record and this record. We put it out right before we went on the road with Motionless back last winter. And basically how that song came about, the process of me doing melodies and patterns for screaming or yelling usually come about after we've nailed down all the music, and I'll sit with the music and I'll just sort of stream of consciousness, just say things and make up patterns. And the part that comes in the first time the song "Me, Myself, and I" gets heavy, for some reason I just had this sort of blah 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 blah. It was very like schizophrenic pattern. And when I came back to write the lyrics, I said, "Ooh, this sounds like there's like two characters at play. It sounds like that there are two parts of the person who's singing this song actually going on." So I thought maybe it would be interesting if we did this song about Jekyll and Hyde, because that's what it sounded like to me. It sounded like these two voices coming from the same body were fighting one another. So we did that song about The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. The fans seemed to love it. It seemed to really, I don't know, it turned some heads, I guess, on the internet, and I felt that we were onto something. So when it came time to do the new album, I thought maybe it would be interesting if we sort of continue this concept, because we want this song to be on the new record, and why don't we do every song about a book? So that's how it was initially thought of. And then as it got more, we got more into the subject matter, we began to think how cool it could be for, a lot of kids in high school and middle school or even in college have to read these stories, they're required reading. So it became such a cool thing, like, well, maybe this could make English class fun again. Maybe if these kids see that one of their favorite bands is doing it and they're a cool band, maybe I'll pay attention to it. And I wish I had that in high school, because unfortunately it was like a little bit of a chore to me at first. And then I eventually sat down and read these books, and I said, well, I really should have paid attention, because this was, this wasn't boring stuff like math. This is really interesting. And there's a reason these stories are classic and that they never go out of style, because they're such compelling stories, and there's so much more to them than sort of is just on the surface.
So did everyone bring, so how did was there a lot of other books you wanted to reference that then you cut it down from, or was it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
That you had a huge list of books, and then it ended up with like these 10 tracks.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, the first order of business was, I went through and with the guys, we said, okay, what's every great book that has ever been written? And I think we had probably a list of like at least 50 books that we all really were like, oh, these could make great songs. And then as we sort of whittled things down, a few books that we were really stoked about sort of got lost, because I wanted to make a point to not choose any two stories that were similar. I wanted each track to have its own identity. So books like Bret Easton Ellis's American Psycho ended up getting cut, which is a favorite book of mine, but it just seemed a little bit too similar to the Jekyll and Hyde thing with the duality of man. And our band name in and of itself is a reference to a Kurt Vonnegut book, Cat's Cradle. So that was like, oh man, I mean, we're called Ice-Nine Kills, we're doing this concept, we have to do a Kurt Vonnegut book. And we tried to do that, and while his stories are unbelievable, his books are legendary, it was just too crazy. There was too much going on to fit into a 4-minute song. So unfortunately, like, that got cut, which was a little bit of a disappointment. But it took some real restraint in which books we had to cut and which ones made the grade.
Well, I think, maybe in the future that could be, you could expand this into the online world with your fans. If they have an interest in knowing more books this way, I'm sure you certainly open the door to future possibilities.
Absolutely. I hope so. And, when you do a concept like this, you never know if kids are going to be responding to it in a positive way. And obviously the album isn't out yet, but just the questions that I see online, and we do VIP meet and greets before every show. It seems like kids are really, really interested in this concept, and I hope that I hope it works. I hope people really respond to this, and I hope that we get people excited about literature.
Well, what's next? What do you hope? I guess this is kind of a tough question to answer, and I'm sure that you always want a record to be successful. But you're gonna have the album out on the 4th. You're gonna do a few more appearances, and then you're done for the year. What do you hope happens after this album for you guys? Like going into 2016, what is your hope for Ice-Nine Kills?
I think anytime you're in the entertainment business, whether you're a musician or an actor or producer or director, I think you're always looking to get to that next level where things become a little bit easier and there's more kids at the shows, and it's clear that the band's profile is rising. So, I mean, honestly, that's what I hope. And, the more that kind of stuff happens, the more freedom we'll have next record to have, a bigger budget, or to throw out a few different things that people wouldn't expect, because you sort of have that, the legitimacy and the the higher profile of being a bigger band. So I really hope that happens. It's been a long journey for the band, but I wouldn't have it any other way, because I think that bands that sort of make it too fast often burn out the fastest, and I think that you don't appreciate success as much if things kind of happened easily. And for us, it's been more than organic, and I hope to keep expanding Ice Nine Kills, and I hope that every kid who likes this kind of music eventually becomes a fan, and whether that's realistic or not, probably not, but that would be my hope.
I mean, I think that's a good level-headed goal, though. I mean, obviously everyone wants to get to the top, but I think just constantly forward momentum is more than enough to hope for.
Absolutely, yeah. And with this concept being about famous books, I hope it can help expand our reach to some people who might not normally be into heavy metal. Maybe there's a guy who loves metal and he loves literature, and his buddy just loves literature and listens to pop music, but maybe he can turn to his friend and say, hey, I know you don't like screaming or you don't like fast music, but this band did an album about all these books that you love, and maybe that opens up the door to those kind of people too.
I think I would join the Ice Nine Kills book club. I mean, this could be a future option for you.
Yeah, right below Oprah's book club. I think we got it.
I get it. I mean, come on, you pick a book a season, and then after everyone reads and participates, you guys drop an acoustic song based on that book. Come on, I
actually think that could be a great idea.
I just I recognize a lot of the books on the list, and the ones I don't know, I will hopefully check out. Does the insert tell people what book they're based on? Like, how will people know what the songs are? Okay, good.
It does. We didn't want to make an announcement too early, online, and we haven't yet. We wanted to kind of veil it in mystery, but I thought it was important for people who buy the album to know which book is inspired which song. So that is clearly inside the album, right above the lyrics of each song. And so it's a mystery. Other than those three songs, it's sort of a mystery as to which song is about which book. So
yeah, I thought about burning through them, but I want people to have the surprise, because the titles are funny, and I think once people connect the dots on what they're related to, they kind of take on a whole different life. So it's fun to keep the mystery, I think.
I agree, and we tried with every song title to wink at the audience, make a little nod or reference to the book, and that's always one of the toughest parts for me. That's one of my favorite parts, and the toughest part is coming up with song titles, because I think it's very important. I think a lot of people sort of overlook the importance of a good song title.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's the first thing that can possibly sell somebody on at least checking something out.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I do that all the time. It's even artist names first and then the song title. If you see a good song title on Twitter, you're more likely to click if you think it's funny or interesting or whatever it may be.
Absolutely.
Well, I thank you so much for taking time to talk to me, man. I want to run through everything real quick. So Every Trick in the Book, new album, comes out December 4th. Pre-orders are up now.
Yes.
Get some last minute with those. You're playing right now. You got release shows next week. I forget where they all are off the top of my head. But yeah.
We got this.
Go ahead.
December 4th, we're in New York City at Slake. December 5th, Hartford, Connecticut at the Webster Underground. Mm-hmm. And then wrapping up the CD release shows is December 6th at the Middle East in Cambridge. And you can find all the information on our website, ice9kills.com, or through our Facebook and Instagram. And then we have 3 in-store acoustic performances that following week, the 7th, 8th, and 9th in Pennsylvania, as well as upstate New York, Rochester area.
Great, man. Well, I wish you the best of luck with this release, and I'm going to try to come out to the release show next weekend and see you guys. So hopefully maybe we'll meet up then, and yeah, we'll talk about the record some more.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on the show. It was a fun experience, and you asked really good questions. So
well, I appreciate it.
I had a good time.
No, I appreciate it, dude. Anytime I can talk to somebody that likes books or horror movies, it's a lot easier. So I appreciate
it. Exactly.
All right, man. Have a great day.
All right. See you, buddy.
You too.